The art of diplomacy. How many years does it take for people to get their acts together, is what some are saying. To find it in their hearts, to open up to the nature of what it is that we need to do on this plane or in our own families, to create the wisdom that allows for us to come through free and clear from the boundaries of our own minds. Our hearts are always connected on a soul level. For the most part, there are disparities of vision from different planes. So this is why the vibration in which we vibrate can often feel discordant for some and very aligned with many others. How many of us want to create from a place of arguments galore? That's where Brenda was at one point in time, feeling it. Discord was probably the worst feeling for her. This disharmonious vision, the one that aligns us with the idea that there's nothing wrong with who we are, right? And so if I get to be mean and angry, that means that others just accept me for who I am. And yet when I leave that vision as a soul, I would say, thank goodness I'm no longer in that vibration. Some of us love to be angry, or some of us are not aware of what our anger is actually showing us and others. Many are utilizing tools of aggression to get their points across, correct? Others are saying, I'm doing it for my family. I'm doing it for my friends. I'm doing it for my vision. What we often think is often what we're creating with, and that is the nature of why so many who are in the fields of psychology are winning the war against drugs and alcohol. Do you know how many people change their vision when they're under the force of alcoholic visions, perhaps? These are the souls that Brenda has created within the past, knowing how to avoid the confrontation with those who are no longer in control of their behavior. And yet their behavior sets them free from others, is what they're saying. So those who are trying to free themselves from the vibrations in which they vibrate in their minds, the pain of the past most often, is what is allowing them those ideas of, I'm going to escape from the pain of that moment. Not knowing how to free themselves from the discordant vision that they planted that allows them to then see the beauty of the wisdom that they gained from the experience of that pain and then move forward from it. This is where people start to open up to the nature of, it still hurts my mind or my heart. If it's in your heart, then there's a different kind of vibration that we can work with that allows others to see where that discordant vision is coming from. Others are saying, I'm stuck. I can't get past the anger. I was never expressing the anger, is where some are. Others will say we get to express our anger because it allows us to free ourselves from the pain and the vibration of repression of anger. And yet others are saying, I just know how to recalibrate my system after such an episode. This is where Brenda goes. We want to talk about the nature of the nervous system that many people are claiming is part of the problem. And she is saying, I know how to recalibrate my system, and I know how to do it from a place that's wise for me, often on my own. I don't need to tear others down in order to feel better about who I am, because to me that's a sign that I'm in distress. Now, when people look at her and say, whoa, it means there's something not right. And people will say, what does that mean? That's how she's able to do what she does. Because when she says, if I'm reacting in a way that is overblown, it means it's on me to figure out what's going on within my nervous system or my mindset that is allowing that kind of vibration to freely express it. And others are saying, well, I utilize it, tools of aggression to get my point across, and that seems to be the way in which it is. This is why we're talking about the art of diplomacy. You're not going to feel diplomatic if you're in the vibration of anger explored. Okay? Versus those calm, wise minds who come together with an agenda about what can we do to make this situation better for each of us, potentially. Because diplomatic relations are a strength of souls like hers. I know how to get the win-wins for many of us. I know how to align with those who honor all of us, not just one side or the other. And when she's in her diplomatic relations, people can honor that vision. Yet she says, there are those moments I've had where in order to free myself from the foolish natures that I was caretaking, there are souls who I went along with who now realize they were foolish in thinking that she was somehow going to leave her own heart behind in some way to honor theirs more than her own soul's vision, which somehow is able to tap into the nature of the love of all and each soul as it comes across the plane in her vision. That's who she is. I'll know who you are if it's needed for me to know. Now that's when people start to say it's her soul's love of all that grants her that vision, that grants her that wisdom, that grants her the understanding of diplomatic relations gone awry. She's had her own flukes of vision that have come through. That's what many are saying. Oh, that was a fluke that you got to align with that kind of vision, because we see you on the screen angrier at some souls than others. And this is why her soul says, I'm on a path of glory for those of the love of all. And what that means is I understand that both sides have their own anger. See, do you see how that tone of reflection shows us as divided when in fact we're coming together to align with an agenda that is more about the love of all? But it is obscene to think that there are not situations in which there is a one side versus the other. And it depends on the mindset that many are coming along with. If you are in the vision of Brenda building bridges, her soul's going to come through. Building bridges is where many are. Do you want to build a bridge with these souls that are taking advantage of other people's mindsets? That's where she draws the line. I'm not here to reinforce the manipulation of those who are vulnerable in their mindsets. That's what I'm working with. Okay? There are foolish natures on the line. Someone's saying it's a foolish nature. Basically saying that if their vision isn't honored in totality, then they know they're not working with their own soul. This is the nature of an alignment of your soul's vision of love versus the idea that love of all means that there is a give and take momentum for many of us. It is also not the same as receiving your own soul session. And Brenda knows the idea of reconnecting with your soul is, of course, you're loved and adored and cherished, but there are definitely paths that she has put herself on with certain souls that were not the best for her. It created more havoc and harm for certain souls. And she had to then go through the pain of rejection or of the discernment wasn't quite right. This is the nature of what that is. We do have paths available to us that are not about rejection of everyone around us who doesn't think like we do. But Brenda was in that vision at one point, almost. She always knows her heart's there, and she comes back to it often, saying, I have a hard time with political agendas of late because of the nature of receiving the wisdom from both sides. And knowing that there are those souls on the other side of the veil that know very well what our souls are working with and what kind of victimhood we are creating from. And that's where most people are in this pain vision. They are with the vision of I'm a victimhood versus I am an actual victim of something in this moment. Now, many of us are also projecting victimhood for ourselves based on the conditions of the present. And that is where Brenda thrives in the vision of knowing what is or isn't coming through and who is going to align with the nature of what that is. It doesn't mean it's going to be pleasant always. It doesn't mean it's about being pleasant. It's about the nature of the reality in which we vibrate. Now, when Brenda is in the moment of beauty, and you would be surprised how much time she spends reinforcing the beauty of not only of who she is, but her surroundings and the love of her soul's family, her friends, and whatnot. It can be a challenge sometimes for those who disagree, but it doesn't mean that it's not honored as a relationship worth keeping. Some of us are meant to disengage from certain relationships, and that's what is understandable, because you have to understand Brenda was at this place in time where her vision was, and it was brought to her from a plane of love. She was at peace at all cost, including her own soul's vision of what love was for her. Okay, I'm not going to fight those who have a different soul's vibration in their hearts. What I will say is that I know what I know about the heart of my soul and my vibration, and we are not just riding in one vibration of here or there, or one vibration of good or bad, or healthy or sick, or that's why people start to understand we're fluid in our vibrations. We're fluid in our ideas. We're fluid in the ideas of who we are that we create with. We often think we're only creating with those who live within the bounds of our country or our minds or our wisdom. And that's when people start to understand, when you open up to the nature of the collective nature and you start to receive those souls who are going to make an impact on this plane in some way, shape, or form, you've got the right ticket to paradise most often, because you can see it for what it is. It's another experience of projection that people are working with that allows them to open up their hearts and minds to the nature of creation from those who are in that idea of religion, perhaps, or just, let's not make it religious, because creation is it's like a neutral energy. It's not something that is owned by anyone. Those on the spiritual alignment might be more in the idea of what we're manifesting. Okay, so that's the nature of those who say what we create, and others saying what we manifest, what we're bringing to us. Because in essence, creation is part of the process of what am I doing in this moment. Others are like, the idea of manifesting is I understand I'm bringing it to me. It's not just something I actually know what it is, but I know that whatever is here is for me in this moment to experience, whether I enjoy it or not. This is why Brenda gets her future handed to her in various ways to show her how far forward she is in her projections of her life or her livelihood. She's beautiful for staying in the moment now. She was of past for a long time, and it was mostly in this idea of I'm in pain and I know that I need to work things out. And that's where it can be a troubling vision for some who say we need to work through the pain of our past in order to move forward. Others are saying it's the idea of acceptance of it as a moment in time and space. And there are those who will say that's easier said than done. It absolutely is, and we understand that, and we grant you that rejection of that vision. But if you can say, where am I now? This is about getting into the present moment, saying, where am I now? What is going on around me? This is the nature of really grounding yourself in that present moment and saying, what's going on? Why am I sitting and focusing on the past versus how can I plant the seeds for a better future for me right now? These are why those successful souls will come through and say, she's planting the seeds of love for all because that's the only way she knows how to be. Okay? Even when I disagree, it doesn't mean that I don't love you. Even when I let people go, it doesn't mean I don't love them. From the idea of I care for you enough not to hurt you. This is where I'm at usually. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want you to be in pain. I don't want you to suffer. I want you to enlighten yourself to the enjoyment of who you are without me in your life. I grant you the wisdom of knowing when sometimes people know we're not working well together. And I'm not willing to deny my own vision of love, of what's coming to me next, just to make someone else comfortable in their moment of progression. That's what we're going to talk about, the moment of progression. Brenda is more about the nature of pushing us forward. Others want people to stay in the moment. She says, you understand this is about letting people know that our future is already being planted from the soul level. So those seeds of love that she is honored for her life come to her in spades. Because she says, I don't need to go anywhere else because this life is the one for me here on this plane. Okay, I'm not afraid of the future. I'm not afraid of my past. I have some moments of it that were not pleasant that I had to go through. But that was the nature of what I was also doing when I said I'm going to open myself up to bring wisdom and guidance, not only for myself, but for those on the screen. So that's why in my vision of my next course that is going to be coming through, I'm going to be working with those souls who will also be receiving wisdom from their own souls, love of guidance and soul wisdom. Okay, it's soul guidance and soul wisdom. And everyone knows, yes, we are souls, but there is a definite transition when you go through the process of reuniting with your own soul from a higher plane of love. Let's put it that way. Discovery of who we are from various levels of love of life, liberty and pursuit of happiness, right? This is where she is most often in this moment because of the nature of the focus on this plane very much is in the ideas of political ideologies or those things that affect us day to day. Now, some will say that my views are a little bit slanted to the left. She's off in the stratosphere for a lot of people because in essence, she has experienced soul visions that aren't even of human nature in that idea of angels, right? No, it's not about the nature of angels, okay? That's why those souls who say, oh, she's tapped into the nature, you do understand that our pets have their own souls. So this is the nature of the consciousness of who we are on this plane. What kind of visions do we want to create with? Are we in the vision of I love who I am and everyone else around me? Or is it more about the experience of who I am that I'm not quite happy with sometimes? That's where we can all go. It's the experiences that I'm creating. It's not who I am. I'm beautiful for who I am, and you are too. Your soul may have something different to allow you to have a better expression of who you are from where they see it. Knowing what's challenging you in your minds most often. Your relationships are beautiful, even when they're showing you the discord. So let's retool this to be more about the diplomacy of who we are, right? Many of us will say, I'm meant to be on my own. That's a fallacy for most of us. We're here to create with many souls, many different visions, many different ideas. And when people think that they're not, it's most likely those souls who are so discordant in their visions or so disappointed in the views of life. And then what happens is they create those situations that allow them to rise into another plane of understanding. And that is the nature of crossing over most often. Or they can decide, I need to pull back from the nature of Brenda's vision. Most don't want to know about what they're planting for themselves. Okay, just because you're miserable here doesn't mean that you're going to cross over anytime soon. Okay, there are lessons to be learned in the idea of misery loves company. That's what Brenda said. She's like, oh, look at how much misery people want to be sitting in. and they want others to be there with them, versus the idea of let's work on our issues, let's rise up into the nature of progression in the moment, and let's start to tell ourselves about the diversity of who we are, even from a soul level. Who are we creating with in our minds and our hearts? Do we want a more unified vision of what love of this soul is, or do we want people to see themselves as for or against? Now, Brenda is more in the vision of it's fine to have your choices, your will to pick and choose and be however you want to be, but you might get a better experience if you say, I'm for someone rather than I'm against somebody. Now, we know that many are in that vision of disparity of soul vision because Brenda understands it. It's not easy to do that when we have things flying in our face on the screens telling us who to be. Brenda knows the nature of diplomatic relations come to her from certain souls who are masters of it. And that is the nature of her soul saying, I've got your back no matter what. Because she's had to deal with souls who are not interested in creating from a place of diplomacy on this plane. She's also had her own moments of it saying, I have to be done with this relationship. It's too painful for me not to know if I can trust someone in their vision for me and my family. Okay? That's where people start to understand. Okay? How many people say, I know people who have ill will towards my family, or who have ill will towards the nature of what I'm creating. Okay, so I've had to piggyback off the Christ soul vision for a while. People will want to know what that is. No, you don't. No, you don't. And this is why people think, oh, this is a beautiful vision. Oh, it's going to bring everyone together. You would be surprised at how many people now know, as Brenda stated, if you are forcing your vision onto others, you have put yourself in a vision of exposing yourself to the limitations of your, not only yourself, but of your actual vision of the system in which you vibrate. What you're saying is, my soul system is so inspirational that it must be forced upon others, which we know is not the highest vibration of inspirational wisdom. How many people want to be forced into inspiration? What does that say about your inspiration? Is it inspirational? Is it truly inspirational? It may be the most beautiful thing in the world for you, but it might have its limitations if others are not saying, this is the right way to be for me, right? That's why the nature of the love of all can sound airy-fairy, but it means that there's an allowance for others to be who they are in their moment, to go through their progression of moments in the ways in which they themselves need to. They may need to see the pain of the past as a beautiful thing to create from over and over and over. I am that kind of soul. I have done that vision many times and it sucks. My quest for freedom is what allowed me to move myself forward. Okay? So this is why creating from the present moment versus those ill wills of the past is where we want to align when we go to the nature of trying to say, where am I now in my understanding of who I am versus who was I then? Was I a child when I was hurt and I'm still holding on to that pain? That's what many are saying. They're saying, oh, I've got it in my body. The only reason you have it in the body is because it is part of the nature of a potential imprint, or you keep reinforcing it due to the nature of it's always coming at you from those who say that you have to deal with that in order to move forward. That's a fallacy in itself. You don't have to fix everything from your past in order to rise up. Brenda can guarantee you that vision because she knows it. There is no way I went through every single thing that I either participated in, did to myself or to others in order to lift myself up. Now, I did go through and I did a vision of apology to all the souls that I knew that I could have done a better job to. And I just made a statement to all the souls that I could think of. I went through my life. This is me. From the time that I could remember, and every soul that I knew that I hurt or discarded along the way in a way that may not have been as honorable as what I could have been, even as a child. But I gave myself the freedom to do that freely. And then I heard back from those souls, because this is who I am, and we had an understanding of the intention was not to hurt people. I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. So I tried to gently let people go. That's who I am most often. Now, I've had my moments of diplomacy depleted from me. I want people to honor that vision where people are saying, I'm done being Mr. Nice Guy. Now I'm going for the throats. When you're on the soul level, you don't necessarily want to go that way. Brenda has had her moments where she says to herself, I understand where you are in your vibration. Like, she's had a soul from a soul of pain who also created beauty with her. But she said, you're a lesson that I had in my life. And I want you to remember that. For her, it was a lesson learned. Wisdom gained from it. But it doesn't mean that she's like, let me go back and create from that again. I've learned the lesson. I understand where I'm at now. I don't need to reflect on those souls who tried to manipulate me, whether or not they were aware that they were doing that on this plane or not. Okay, mass manipulation is another place where we're going to go within the art of diplomacy. But we want people to see it as those who understand how it's being done. And so we will reflect on the nature of, we could call it mass manipulation or the art of diplomacy, correct? There is a different vibration between those who are actively trying to manipulate people for their own gain versus those who are trying to shift the dynamics of relationships for a better outcome for all. And this is what we want people to understand where Brenda is. She's known that for her whole life. She understands the nature of this is for me versus this is for us. And I want you all to understand I've had my moments of me on the screen, for sure. But there is often the vision of the love of all, and we want you to see the dynamics and the progression of her journey in the vision of reunification with soul level understanding. So with that, we want to say thank you for watching. Please like, follow, and subscribe depending on where you're watching this from. And remember, in her vision, this is the most beautiful place to be, where you say to yourself, let me stay curious, wise, and soulful. And that means we allow ourselves to be open to the nature of others. And finally, we can say with the love of all on our hearts, be free to be. Be free to be. Have a wonderful day.